Tonight on Let It Rip.
It's not a mix of good signatures that are in there with bad ones. The circulators here committed fraud.
The field of Republicans hoping to be the next governor cut in half after their petitions to make the ballot were found to be fake. The candidates say they're the victims of shady collection companies, and some plan to fight it out in court. But first,
as a nation, we have to ask, when in God's name are we going to stand up to the gun lobby?
the nation once again mourning after children are killed in a school shooting. And once again, the same debate emerges on gun control. It is time now to let it rip, and we're going to start off tonight with that unbelievable school massacre in Texas, where a teenager went into a classroom and murdered 19 children and 2 teachers. Within moments of that news breaking on Tuesday, we saw calls for gun control in both Washington and in Lansing. Joining us now to talk about the aspect of this horrible tragedy that everybody is chatting about right now is conservative attorney Terry Johnson and Alexis Wiley, a Democrat who runs her own firm, Moment Strategies in Detroit. Plus, of course, anchor attorney Charlie Langton, back from a couple weeks of a break, and we're glad you're back with us here on Let It Rip. Terry, let's begin with you. President Biden just said that Republicans basically lack a backbone to do anything, to act on gun control, because the Republican Party is beholden to the gun lobby. Does he have a point?
He does have a point, but I think that people are missing the point that he's making. The point is the gun lobby is the American citizens. The gun lobby is not the NRA. As you know, the NRA went bankrupt, what was it, last year or 2 years ago? The American people are the ones that are out here buying guns. They are the ones who are out here making these decisions. It's no different than if we, you can't say this person is over the gun lobby or the gun lobby this. It truly doesn't exist. Unlike you can say who's the president of the UAW or the AFL-CIO. What Biden does not understand is the gun lobby are the average American citizens who want to be able to protect themselves and others from incidents that took place not only in Texas, but the one recently in Buffalo as well.
But Terry, let me ask you a question, because no one here is saying let's take guns away from people. Is that what you're hearing when you hear about gun control?
No, what's truly happening is you have people who truly don't understand the issue. For example, I'm not a medical doctor, but for me to talk about heart disease and what things should be done, we need to leave those things to the experts. Unfortunately, we just, we repeat things without really understanding. You hear people say things such as weapons of mass destruction, the AR-15. The AR-15 is not a firearm, or it's not a rifle that any American soldier would take over to Afghanistan or anywhere else and try and defend themselves, because it's just not designed for that. We need to understand what what we're talking about here.
But when you talk about a semi-automatic weapon that's taken into a school by a teenager, and we've seen this time and time again, and without much of an effort, able to open fire and kill almost 24 people in just a 40-minute period, that gives you reason to pause. Alexis Wiley, when you take a listen to what Terry is saying when it comes to what needs to be done, when you hear the words gun control, what does that mean to you?
Honestly, I think the word gun control, the phrase, has gotten so political that it's meaningless. I think what is so upsetting to me is that we literally are dealing with an incident where our children have died, teachers died protecting kids. And we run to our sides and say, it's about gun control, it's about mental health. Why don't we have an honest conversation where we take off our political hats and say, what do we have to do on behalf of our kids? How do we make sure that it's difficult for people to get the kind of guns that are used in these kinds of incidents? But also, how do we also look at making sure that checking in on people? Because what we're seeing is that coming out of this pandemic, people are not okay. There's a lot of mental health issues right now, and people are struggling. I think we need to actually have an honest, holistic conversation about what we need to do. My problem with this whole thing is that it gets political so fast. And then days pass and you've got everybody in Washington going back and forth, bickering amongst each other, and then nothing's done. And then you have another incident like this and more children, more families, more people grieving. We need to come together and just say, look, it's time to do something that makes common sense and allows us to actually protect ourselves and our families, because our kids don't deserve this.
Charlie, you spent some time yesterday at a school in Macomb County, actually your alma mater. You spent time in front of your high school. You talked with police officials there, school officials there, and it wasn't about gun control. It was about something else. What did you find?
Had nothing to do with gun control. Alexis is right. Gun control, Second Amendment, those are fighting words. That's fighting words. We got to get beyond that. And I think what we're doing is, if we're talking about a school shooting, the best way to do that is to identify people that could have a problem. Social media right now, when you tweet something out, thousands of people, hundreds of thousands perhaps, can see what you tweeted out or put on Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media it was in an instant. And you know what? People know. If you go to a classroom right now and you ask which one may have some struggle, you're going to get an answer. It's not the guns. It's not gun locks. It's not assault weapons, although I'll get into that in a minute. But the bottom line here is, if we had people, teachers, counselors, resource officers that were in the schools and understood the kids and could talk to the kids and find out what they're really thinking, I think we would see a tremendous decrease in any type of fights in schools, assaults in school, and hopefully it would be enough of a deterrent to prevent what happened in Texas and in Oxford. We've got to understand, nothing to do with gun control, but a cop in the school, but a counselor in the school, I think will be really better off.
We need to normalize people saying they're not okay. We need to normalize being able to, a young man, somebody saying, I'm hurting, I'm having these horrible thoughts, I need help. We need to create pathways of help, because at the end of the day, yes, I firmly believe in gun control, but I also believe we cannot ignore that there is something not right with you when you walk into a school and kill children, or a grocery store.
And I want to say one thing. My wife is a mental health therapist, and my wife always says that, you know, the mental health piece of all of this, we want to blame the weapon, we want to blame, and maybe there's a lot of room for that, but we have to get down to what Charlie was talking about, which is who is looking out for the symptoms, and the symptoms are out there if you can find them. Terry, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, here's the first thing I think we really need to do is look at the facts of what happened. The first thing is, this is a school that had zero security, right? Let's just call it what it is. This guy walked right in. There wasn't there were multiple places or points that he could have walked in. There was no security whatsoever. The police got there, and it's my understanding that, one guy engaged him and he had to wait an hour or thereabouts for a SWAT team or whatever to arrive. So is the problem, the gun that he brought in, or is the problem that the school didn't have security?
Here's the problem.
Wait, Charlie, but we got to have that honest conversation.
But let's talk about Buffalo, though. You had a guard who was sitting right in the front. He was there, and he was armed, and he was murdered. So it is not literally.
But he didn't go in the front. But let's be real. He didn't go in the front door. He went in the side door, and we saw the video of that. But more importantly, let's take Detroit Public Schools. You know why we don't have shootings in inside Detroit Public Schools? Because they have hardened that area with metal detectors. My children, I would prefer them. Any of us who've ever been on a plane, we've got to go through a process to get through that security. We go to a ball game, we've got to do that. Are those places more important than our children's schools?
Let me ask this. I think you're right on that. Security guards, metal detectors. But tell me, other than a Second Amendment right, don't answer it that way. Why do we need an AR-15? Why do we need an assault weapon? And don't say Second Amendment. I have never been able to find an answer.
I can answer that. It's a choice that I have, and to do whatever I want to do with it. And here's the problem, Charlie. You're saying it is no different. That is a rifle. What if he used a shotgun? What if this person actually came in and took some chemicals from under his sink and made a bomb? Because what people forget.
What is the official use, the practical use for an AR-15? Not the fact that you're allowed to have one because you're allowed to have one, but what is the practical use to have an AR-15? Can you answer that?
I can answer it in this way. What's the practical use of having a car that goes 160 miles an hour on the freeway when you can't go anywhere that way?
So this is when the conversation gets crazy. This is when we lose each other.
I think we have a right to have a weapon. Absolute 100% a right to have a weapon. But
However,
but which weapon? Not every weapon. You have a right to have a weapon to legitimately protect yourself. That's the Second Amendment. That's legitimate for protection and maybe deterrent. But to have the biggest gun in the world.
It's not the biggest gun in the world. And you guys have got to stop saying that.
Alexis, go ahead. We only have about 30 seconds left. Alexis, go ahead.
I think one thing that's an issue is, we say gun control as like Charlie said, it is a loaded term, right? I think we have to get more specific. So I was on a website where they were talking about really Sandy Hook and some of the things that happened there. And one of the things they found that was because the shooter had to reload his gun and like he didn't have a high capacity magazine. Because he had to reload his gun, 11 kids got away in that moment, right?
Yeah, but you're missing a practical point. Those guns jam.
Hold on.
Hold on. Go ahead, Alexis.
What I'm saying is I think that we should really be looking at practical, common sense things. Issues like, should you really have an AR-15? I say no. Should you have a magazine that has capacity to have a ton of bullets where, you don't have a situation where those kids would not have gotten away? Right.
But Terry, Alexis, and Charlie, we have to wrap up this part of our conversation and move on to our next. We thank you for your time today, Terry and Alexis. Coming up, it's official. We're talking about the GOP field for governor. It's been cut in half over petition fraud. We're going to take a deep dive into that coming up next. Welcome back to Let It Rip as we talk about the political earthquake that's upended the race for governor, at least on the GOP side, where half of the candidates were just kicked off the primary ballot because of massive petition fraud. On the panel tonight, Michael Griffey, a candidate who actually did make the ballot. He's running in the Democratic primary for the 13th congressional district. We also have Jamie Rowe, a Republican political consultant who's doing work for gubernatorial candidate Kevin Rinke. Alexis Wiley, of course, consultant and political guru with us as well. And Tori Sachs, executive director of the Michigan Freedom Fund, that's obviously very closely associated with the DeVos family, who just threw their support behind Republican Tudor Dixon. And everybody knows Charlie. Charlie, it's good to see you as well. Let's get started. Jamie, we begin with you. The candidates say they're the victims here, but isn't it really up to them to hire the competent people to make sure that they get on the ballot the right way?
You know what? I spent a lot of years working for Candace Miller when she was both Secretary of State and a member of Congress. And when she was in Congress, you had to get signatures to get on the ballot. And we always said, you in the course of your career in politics, you can and will screw up everything conceivable. But the one thing you can never screw up is ballot access. So you cannot make mistakes when collecting your signatures. And it is incomprehensible to me that these campaigns went out and rolled the dice on such shoddy petition management. I for the life of me, I can't understand how it happens. And the buck stops with the candidate.
Okay, now you said that on the air yesterday, and Charlie and I on the air had a discussion about it, which I love the point that you made and he made, which is the buck stops with the candidate, because when you hire a company to do some work, you're the one who hired him. So you're responsible ultimately. However, let's talk about the chance of some real corruption happening here. The possibility and the allegation that there are some bad operatives involved with trying to oust some candidates. Tori Sachs, do you buy that?
Look, I think it's important that everyone have confidence and trust in this process. I think that Secretary Benson and her staff should absolutely ensure that everyone either has the amount of signatures needed or doesn't need. I don't think relying on hearsay or what they think is accurate is enough. But look, I've managed a statewide race. I've worked on getting petitions for somebody who, didn't have a lot of money, wasn't part of the establishment. And this is the entry level of showing that you can manage something. And if you can't get 15,000 signatures and manage 2 or 3 vendors, I don't know how you're going to manage the state. And frankly, that's how we got Gretchen Whitmer, who shows that she can't manage the state. And that's why we have the UIA fiasco. We gave out $8 billion in fraud money because nobody's managing the state. We have to get somebody in here who can manage the state.
Let's talk to Michael Griffey. Look, we talk about letting the voters decide and have the final say here. And then you have situations where if there's indeed was some kind of a corruption here, then you're talking about people trying to get people ousted off. You yourself, Mr. Griffey, tried to get Ollier kicked off. Shouldn't it be up to the voters to decide who's good and bad here and not up to the candidates to try to elbow their way in while kicking someone else out?
What? Just our challenge is very simple and it's straightforward. It's about everybody having to play by the same rules. Same thing you see on the Republican side. You know, as Republicans have been trying to create confusion and to disenfranchise voters and democracy itself, Democrats, we have to lead from the front. And that's what we're doing. You know, our challenge to one of our opponents is based on the ability to make sure that everybody plays by the same set of rules. That includes the political insiders, the do-nothing career politicians. You know, I'm a teacher and principal and civil rights lawyer, and I'm all about equity and making sure that everybody plays by the same set of rules.
Alexis Wiley, you helped, of course, with the campaign for Mayor Mike Duggan. You worked with former Chief Craig there. When you take a look at what happened here, do you smell corruption?
I smell corruption, but also really poor management. So I think Tori is right when she says that it's a management issue, because like when it comes to a campaign, you got like, that's your first job. That's the one you need to make sure nobody messes up. And having just come off of a campaign, we were so meticulous to the point of like lawyers looking line by line to make sure that everything was perfect. And at one point we had somebody on our campaign who had our signatures and had them in like a fireproof bag to make sure that we had and drove them personally to Lansing to get them reviewed. Like, you go crazy over your petitions. And to not see that on these campaigns, it absolutely does raise those management questions. I also want to say there have been no questions about Gretchen's signatures. I just want to throw that out there. But I think that we're really at a point where we need to be, I think that what's happening makes sense. If you can't get this basic task done, you should not be on the ballot. Like, it's just kind of a given.
Let's talk about the legal ramifications of this. Charlie Langton, our legal expert, anchor reporter, wearing all of those hats here. When you take a look at Chief Craig, who says, look, I think we can still fight this. I believe that there was some fraud here, and we're going to make sure we get to the bottom of it. I think there's something like 15 affidavits that he's taking a look at. Does he have hope here?
This is the biggest political screw up maybe in the history of Michigan politics. No, he's got no argument. No, you need 15,000 and you got to get them. And if they're fraudulent, about half of them, by the way, no, he's out. Listen, I like the chief. Listen, and it's maybe not even his fault, but it is his fault because he's the head of the campaign. It's his name, and he's going to be the governor. You got to look at, I've run a campaign. You look at every single line. It's basic 101 politics. And whether you're running for judge or Congress or governor, you know exactly from day one how many signatures you need, how many you can get, and if you need to buy them. And maybe that's the scandal here, but that's a different issue. No, you listen, your remedy is just sue the person, or when they get arrested and convicted, Dana Nessel will do an investigation. She'll find the people and they'll go to jail, and maybe there'll be some restitution. But bottom line is Perry Johnson, Chief Craig, and the other ones, they're not going to be on the ballot. I don't care what court you're going to, they're not going to be on the ballot.
We got to take a 30,000-foot view for the viewers at home who aren't paying as close attention as so many others in the media and politics about this. Bottom line is this: today that board got together and they said, all right, let's take a look at the case here. And the board of canvassers said, we're voting basically to boot these folks off. But the chief released a statement, the former chief, just a couple of hours ago, saying we're disappointed in the board of canvassers' decision, specifically talking about rejecting entire pages of petitions. Why didn't they just reject the signatures that were duplicates or fraudulent? Does he have any water to hold there? Charlie.
Well, as I understand it, now, as I may defer this one to Jamie because he's done a little bit about this, but the issue is, I understand it, that if the circulator is bad, the entire piece of paper, you sign on the bottom if you're a circulator. And if the circulator's no good, this whole thing goes away and you can't count them. So as I understand, that's the law, and you can't change in midstream. Maybe later, but not now.
Jamie Rowe, what are your thoughts on that based on your experience?
I think they have no chance of being on the ballot. I totally agree with that. I think that There is no other recourse here. The staff at the Secretary of State, and I used to work there, is very meticulous, and I don't think that they make rash judgments or unfounded judgments. And these candidates should have been looking at these things a heck of a lot earlier than now. And quite frankly, the Brewer complaint was out there a month ago. And I will tell you what, I very rarely agree with Mark Brewer on anything. I read through that complaint on Chief Craig and I was like, oh my God, I think he's got him here. And, you know, I just don't see a recourse for these campaigns. And they should have been paying attention to this from day one, not after the petitions have already been filed. I would have found this in 5 seconds if those petitions had been submitted to my campaign.
Well, first of all, note down the time and date because Jamie Rowe just agreed with Mark Brewer. That's history in the making right here on
that is big news.
But I want to ask you this. I mean, in terms of the petition signatures, I mean, how antiquated is that system? I feel like here we are, it's 2022, and we're still looking at a system that looks like it's probably from, you know, the beginning of times. I mean, is there a better way?
I think it's a very good system because it's a test of your organization. Tory knows this. Tory managed John James' campaign when he ran for the U.S. Senate. And it is a massive undertaking that you do. It is not an easy thing to get done. I'm working right now on the Secure My Vote campaign, and we have to get 340,000 valid signatures to get that on the ballot. And let me tell you what, that's an even more difficult task. And we actually saw some petitions come through from these same fraudsters, and we threw them out. We caught them and we threw them out. So, you know, it is not an impossible process. I think it's an important part of the process, and it's a good part of the process.
Tory, let's get the ball over to your court for a moment and have you reflect on what you're hearing, but also about what this could look like come election time. Could it be a Tudor Dixon versus Governor Gretchen Whitmer race here?
Look, I think a lot of people are giving Tudor Dixon a look. They really like what she has to say. She has a real plan to make Michigan a family-friendly state. I think that has a lot of people excited right now, whether you're talking about education, the price of gas, or how we're going to move our state forward. You know, we've been held back and have devastating policies. We've had mismanagement in government, and that's why this petition thing is so important. If I was running Chief Craig's campaign, we would have turned in the petitions before Christmas of last year. There is no need to waiting to the last minute, getting all of these fraudulent signatures. There's no excuse for that. When you have mismanagement like that, that's how you end up with a governor like Gretchen Whitmer, who gave away $8 billion in fraudulent unemployment money. That money floods the market, it goes overseas, and it creates the inflation that we're seeing today. And it didn't even help the families in Michigan who are really struggling.
But wait a minute, there's a remedy here for Chief Craig and for Perry Johnson, any of them. They can write a write-in campaign. They can do a write-in campaign. And listen, I think Mayor Duggan did that at one point in time when there was an issue, and he won. And then if you win the primary, your name legitimately gets on the general election ballot. So if this is final, the courts say, Board of Canvassers, you're right, launch a write-in campaign. James Craig and Perry Johnson. It's pretty easy names to spell. And anyone else, anybody else.
Well, not only that, quick question for you. When you take a look at someone like James Craig with his public profile and his polling numbers, if he ends up being a write-in candidate and he gets the headlines about how he was shot off the ballot, does that help him, Tory? And does that catapult him to be a contender?
You need a really good organization to run a write-in campaign, like a really strong organization. That I don't know that we've seen that right now. I think that it's really going to come down to Tudor Dixon, Kevin Reinke, Garrett Soldano, and Gretchen Whitmer.
That is all the time we have for this segment. Thank you, all of the panelists who joined us today. Hopefully, when we come back, we'll have a minute to get some final thoughts. We'll be right back. Michael Griffey, running in the 13th Congressional District. Final thoughts.
Thanks, Roop. You know, I started my career in the classroom as a high school English teacher, went on to become a high school principal. And I'm running because I believe people like us, the ones that have their feet on the ground doing the work, should represent us in Washington so that we can fight for our right to vote, so that we can end the epidemic of gun violence killing our youth, and so that we can have universal pre-kindergarten for every child in America. You can reach me at michaelgriffey.com, MichaelGriffie.com. Looking forward to serving.
Michael, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Tory Sachs, your final thoughts on what we talked about tonight.
Yeah, it's really important to have good leadership. I'd also just like to say it's Memorial Day weekend. Our hearts go out to all the Gold Star families and all of the soldiers, the men and women who served and died for our country. We salute you this weekend.
We certainly do. That is not a red or blue issue. That is an American one, and we thank you for that. Alexis Wiley, final thoughts.
I think that it's going to be really important as we move towards November to make sure that we're electing someone who is a good manager and can make sure that they ended up on the ballot. And my vote is for Gretchen Whitmer.
Jamie Rowe.
Yeah, we are going to file Secure My Vote petitions next week. If you still have some at home and you want to turn them in, go to securemivote.org and find the closest hub and get those petitions in right away.
That does it for this edition of Let It Rip. We thank you for joining us.